Hello once again, it's Mr. Pete, your YouTube shop teacher. Welcome back to beautiful Studio G, and the subject of this video is the discussion and cleaning up and partial restoration of this beautiful little Atlas grinder hone model 2400 circa 1950 to 1955. In that era, I've had this for 5 or 6 years already. I really haven't done anything with it. It does not have a motor on it. It has to be driven by a separate motor belted onto the shaft. It has a 6-inch grind wheel on it, which I really don't need, but the unique thing about this is the hone on the top, which is dual-sided, coarse and fine. It's an oil stone, it is not a water stone, and it is gear driven, so this is kind of an expensive item back then. I think it was $31.50. I'll show you one of the original advertisements in Mechanics Illustrated from about 1955. I could not find this in the Atlas catalog. However, it was also sold by Sears Roebuck under the CRAFTSMAN badge, but exactly the same item. And I'll show you a few pictures at the end of the video of that particular model, although the paint scheme and the badge is really the only different thing. I do not know what Sears charged for it, but it probably was about the same price. So again, I'm going to take this totally apart. We're even going to examine the worm gear in here. I did find a parts list and the original brochure on the internet, so I'll show you all that as well. So stick with me. It's going to be a long video, but no paint. I forgot to tell you, this is my teleprompter here. I can't remember what to say anymore, so I'm reading right off the teleprompter. And this is part 1 of a 2-part video, so make sure you watch both parts. Here it is, 1955, and it was $31.50. That was a lot of money during that time. In fact, it was the equivalent to $358. That's without a motor. So I guarantee they didn't sell many of these, even though it is the handiest home tool ever. It hones, it grinds, it buffs, it cleans, it sands, and it polishes, all for $31.50. Here is the Sears Craftsman version. As you know, Sears sold many different Atlas products. So it's the same item, different paint, different badge. And here's a close-up, but of course we can't read the model number, the only thing we really care about. This particular piece of advertising literature was a fold-out flyer that was mailed out, so this is one half. I'll show you the other half that was folded up. And here was the inside of that fold-out Atlas grinder hone, the tool of 100 uses. I did a search on the internet and I came up with the original operating instructions from 1953. There is page 1. Here's page 2, and I was glad to find out what kind of oil to use in the gear case, and it tells right there 90 weight. And this is their suggested way of setting it up, and I will be doing that at the very end of the video. Notice that this belt guard can be used in the horizontal position or the vertical position if you wanted to mount the motor underneath. And it came complete with operating instructions and showing you various ways you can use it, and again the accessories. And even a little information here on how to use the hone, and for 1953 rather complete safety instructions, but you will notice that this grinder did not come with a face shield covering the 6-inch grind wheel. I was extremely happy that it came with a exploded view type of parts list showing all the different bearings, and you can well see now. I'm going to take this apart. Partially anyway, but you can see here is the worm and the worm gear to give a very slow speed to the hone compared to the high-speed grinding wheel. Now let's have a brief examination of the machine itself and the wear. So you can see it was used quite a bit because the tool rest here has been ground into and has some damage. Not a big deal. And also notice that at this time, the belt guard is in the vertical position, and there was a belt in there, but it's all warped and bent, so I'll be using a new belt when I reassemble it. And looking at the hone now, the hone lifts right off, and there's like a big square nut here. Not like a big square nut, there is a big square nut that goes into this square hole. We got a chip here, and that is what drives the wheel. We do not put water in here. This is an oil stone. I'll talk much more about that. And we have fine on one side, I think 120, and 320 on the other side. This is a 1/2-inch shaft that could be used for accessory items. This is the wrong size. That's 5/8, should be 1/2, but it would go on there, and you can put a wire wheel on here, or a buffing wheel, or just about anything that your little old heart might desire. And looking at the parts list, there are 2 ball bearings, one here and one here. That's high speed. But in here, there is not a ball bearing, but it is an oil light bearing. I suppose because of the low speed, it just wasn't that critical. And looking at it from the back side here, I can't read the decal here, but this is the oil plug. I will take that out in a minute. We'll see if there's any 90 weight in there. And it takes only a few ounces of that oil. And by opening this up, I can see the level or determine the level, and that's where you add more oil as well, so that that worm is immersed, I believe. And then here is the teleprompter. Can be raised and lowered, swiveled, and that of course is used typically to sharpen chisels or plane irons or something of that nature, and that can be brought around on above the wheel. I need tools to change that now, and I'll demonstrate that later, but that gives you a consistent angle as you are honing. I'm more interested in honing pocket knives and things like that, and I will never use the grinding wheel because I have so many other grinders. Also notice that we can raise and lower, so it's universal. Move it in different spots, so a lot of thought was given to this, but as typical with Atlas products, this is Zamak. However, this is a rather heavy cast iron casting here. So that's a brief overview of what this looks like. And by the way, there's a pulley inside here. I think you can see the end of it. So I'll start by taking the cover off. There were 4 screws. Actually, there were 3. One is missing, and there's the cover. I'll note that it can be put into this position, which is what I'm going to do later, but in order to do that, this bracket here on the back side has to be rotated as well. So I'll take that off, clean it up real well. Well, this will pull right off. There's a flat on here, no keyway, just a flat, and that's what, about less than a 2-inch, no, it's a 2-inch die-cast pulley. That is A size, that's 1/2-inch wide. Extra long shaft here to allow for this as well as the accessories that I just talked about. I took one screw out and I loosened the other just to show you that this is slotted. Really well thought out, well engineered. Filthy dirty. And one of the bearings was right in here. And the bearings seem to be okay. No noise. As always, lots of still pictures at the end. I do not know if anyone watches them. So there's the drive nut. See how thick that is for the hone. And this lifts right off. That's the original color. A very dark gray. A lot of wear right here. According to the drawing, there should be a fiber washer, but I'm not sure that there is, so I will look for one, see if I can get that off. No, I don't believe there's even a washer in place, so that is missing. The teleprompter lifts right off. I didn't realize that a moment ago. And a collar with a set screw to change the height. This is die cast, probably Zamac, and can be rotated to different angles. Pretty well, again, thought out. Let me pull this plug out and see how much oil is in there, if any. Nothing is just plain dripping out. There must not be much in here, but remember, I'm going to take off the top too. So we'll see here in a moment how much oil is in there. The screw is missing from the guard. I'm wrong. There is a screw down here. I was getting pretty judgmental. Let me get that out. Why? The Fall of the House of Usher. Very lightweight because it is die cast. Aluminum. This is aluminum, not Zamac. But notice how this was put together here. The tool rest fell off because it is sandwiched in here between the two castings. Pretty neat engineering. And there's the 6-inch wheel. Still fairly good shape if it's the original. So I'll take that off. That'll be a right-hand thread. These would not be original. They didn't use the plastic ones in the 50s. That's a fine thread. If you are enjoying this video, please take the time to hit the like button. Now I was looking, I want to remove this guard, so I was looking for screws here, which I would find them, and I removed some of the gunk, and then turned it around and realized there's just a real little set screw right here, which I have already loosened. And will it come off? Yes, it will. This also is die cast aluminum, rather intricate casting, in perfect shape, no cracks yet. This will all get cleaned up later on. So we're getting down to the basics here. I do not intend to take the shaft out and examine the bearings or anything like that, but I am going to take the top off right now so we can look at the gearbox, and then I'll probably just reassemble that. Love these proto wrenches. I've already loosened up the 3 screws. Well, I was trying to tap it up, and all I got to do is turn it. Duh. Again, a die casting. Look at the ejector pin marks. Let's look inside. From a bird's eye view, there is hardly any oil in there at all. Matter of fact, that's how much. 1/8 of an inch at the most. So I suspect that a lot of oil was lost over the years by just having this thing laying in its side or wherever when it was in storage. So looking inside of here now, you can see the worm right here, and of course the worm gear, and the level of oil would be probably just enough to touch the bottom of the gears, I suppose, so it does not run out or require a seal over here. All right, I cannot get the gear out of there, obviously, because the worm gear is concave on the teeth, you know what I mean? So it cannot get past the worm, and I don't really care at all because I have no intention of taking the rest of it apart, and I will, I think, put some thinner in there and slosh it around off camera, and then put the required oil in there, and I'm going to use, for best results, Napa Premium. Don't get the cheap stuff, get the premium. 80, 85, 90 weight. And I'll look back in the directions. I think it was like 3 ounces or something. Well, the directions say 1/8 of a pint. Now that's a pretty weird way of saying 2 ounces. Don't you agree? What's with them in 1953? And this is what it looks like, only it's dry. I can't turn it a full revolution because this has to be pulled up just a little bit for alignment. I don't see any wear in there, although it's kind of hard to tell. As I said earlier in the video, $31.50 in 1955 or 53 or whenever it was an awful lot of money, and I believe that the bulk of the cost was this cast iron casting and, of course, a worm gear, 2 bearings, 2 shafts, as well as 2 wheels. So it would have cost a lot of money to make this, and therefore they had to price it high and probably didn't sell. Also, I tend to think that the word utility here is aimed toward the home market, certainly not the commercial. I don't think General Motors or Ford had too many of these in their shops. Do you? Here's a little pop quiz for you, something that I failed to mention a few minutes ago. It's a very, very important safety factor, but when I took the grind wheel off of the shaft, and here it is, what is wrong with this? There's a major infraction of safety rules, and what is it? I will correct that, of course, and tell you the answer in part 2. Another thing I wanted to show you here, I've already cleaned this up partially, but I told you that there is a fiber washer right here, but it's badly galled and obviously is spinning here with grit underneath it. I'll see if I can find the new one. If not, I will be forced to use that. And of course, there also is a fiber washer right here, and there's nothing wrong with that, so that can just stay. Okay, this is approximately the halfway point in the video, so it's a good time to stop and get ready for part 2, but that'll be 2 or 3 days from now because I have a lot of cleaning up to do. Everything is oily and greasy, and there might be some minor repairs or little things that I have to do, and I'll do 90% of that off camera because it'll be kind of boring, and then join me in part 2 where I reassemble it, and then I'll get it mounted on a board along with this motor. 1725 is what they recommend, and we'll be up and running. So see you in part 2. Be sure and join me, give me a thumbs up and all of that stuff. Subscribe if you like my work, and I'll see you next time. This is Mr. Pete saying so long for now. Just a little preview of what I'm doing off camera. I've got mineral spirits in here, get all these parts soaking just a little bit, and I'll clean them up with a brush. No painting, remember, so this will all be spotless here in a few minutes, and again, I'll see you next time.